At 6:02 a.m., the tarmac at Ramstein Air Base in Germany buzzed with early morning energy. Jets screaming into liftoff, boots echoing down metal walkways, and the faint scent of jet fuel hanging in the cold marsh air. Among the pre-flight chaos stood Samantha Keller, quiet, unassuming, holding a weathered silver toolbox in her left hand and a laminated ID card around her neck that read, Civilian Contractor Technical Crew Support. No one paid her any mind. And that's exactly how she wanted it. Dressed in drab gray overalls with no rank insignia and hair tied in a loose, forgettable bun, Sam blended effortlessly into the rhythm of base life. Her eyes, though sharp, storm gray, constantly scanning betrayed the calm surface. She was watching everything: personnel movements, guard rotations, flight loadouts. Every detail mattered. Today's mission was classified under NATO Operation Talon Spectre, officially a reconnaissance flight over Eastern European airspace to test radar sensitivity during high-altitude maneuvers. Unofficially, it was a probe. Intelligence chatter suggested Russian-aligned forces were moving weapons-grade material across the disputed border near Luhansk. But nobody on this flight was supposed to know that. Not even the pilots. Nobody except Sam. She approached the aircraft with quiet purpose. A massive E-3 Sentry, its radar dome looming like an all-seeing eye above the fuselage. One of the loadmasters waved her in, barely glancing at her ID. He pointed toward the rear cabin without a word. Sam nodded. Routine sensor recalibration, she said, slipping past him into the aircraft. Routine. That was the word that kept her hidden. Inside the belly of the jet, the crew was already strapped in, chatting casually, unaware that one among them wasn't what she seemed. They cracked jokes about cold coffee and weekend leave. One of them, a young tech named Pierce, offered Sam a protein bar. She declined with a polite nod, settled near the avionics panel, and pretended to review wiring configurations on her tablet. But behind that screen, she wasn't looking at wiring diagrams. Instead, she was accessing live satellite telemetry from a covert U.S. surveillance grid. The convoy in question had appeared 2 days prior on low-res infrared in northern Donetsk. 6 vehicles, 2 confirmed to be shielded cargo carriers, potentially holding prohibited bioagent containers. The information was vague, scattered, but troubling. And now, their flight path would take them directly above where that convoy was projected to pass. Still, the rest of the flight crew believed this was just a sensor test. A long, boring day punching coordinates and running diagnostics while flying circles at 40,000 feet. Sam let them believe that. It was safer that way. As she sat alone near the comms junction, she reached under her seat cushion and retrieved a small black case no larger than a paperback novel. Opening it slowly, she revealed a custom-built neural decoder disguised as a power converter. She plugged it in silently beneath her workstation, and a faint blue pulse lit up across the screen. Encrypted traffic was already flowing. In the cockpit, the flight commander, Major Daniels, checked the weather brief and gave a casual thumbs up to his co-pilot. Smooth skies, he said. Long and boring. Let's burn some fuel. They had no idea they were flying straight into the mouth of a geopolitical crisis. Sam tapped on her tablet and checked the live air traffic overlay. No military threats within 400 kilometers. No known electronic countermeasures activated, yet. But she knew better. Russia's new radio-silent tracking systems didn't show up on radar until they were already beside you. And this airspace, a 50-mile stretch hugging the unofficial ceasefire line, was where they liked to play games? She sighed, leaned back, and let the hum of the aircraft fill her ears. Her eyes closed just briefly, and for a moment she let herself drift, not to sleep, never sleep on a mission, but into stillness. A tactical reset, Memories crept in. 6 years ago, she'd been in a very different sky, extracting a downed diplomat from rebel territory in Syria, riding a modified drone through anti-air fire under the cover of a sandstorm. That mission hadn't gone according to plan either. But she'd learned then, when the mission unravels, the quietest person in the room often becomes the last line of defense. She opened her eyes. A sudden jolt rocked the plane slightly. Nothing major. Turbulence, probably, but enough to stir murmurs from the crew. She glanced at the console. One data stream blinked red. Not local turbulence, interference. Someone was trying to mask a signal. And not just any signal, a directional ping from ground-to-air relay. Likely from a military-grade radar system. She ran the sequence again. It wasn't just jamming. It was precision spoofing. Someone on the ground was already aware of the aircraft's location. And that's when it hit her. This wasn't just a flyover mission with a side objective. The Russians knew about Talon Spectre. They were waiting. Sam stood slowly, reached into her tool bag, and slipped the thin silver ring onto her middle finger. A biometric trigger for her override credentials. Her face, her fingerprints, even. Her heartbeat had been synced to the plane's secondary command system weeks ago. Quietly, through an airbase engineer, who never knew who she really was. As she walked toward the rear of the aircraft, she didn't look back. She had the authority to take control of this flight. She just hoped she wouldn't have to. Sam returned to her seat slowly, the cabin lights flickering slightly as the aircraft climbed through 38,000 feet. Outside, the curvature of the earth had begun to show itself in the thin blue line at the horizon, the space between sky and space, a liminal place where only a few ever truly felt at home. She pulled out a small plastic lens from her kit and slid it into her tablet's camera port. With a soft click, the encrypted HUD blinked alive. This wasn't standard issue NATO equipment. It was a custom CIA interface called Spectre 9, designed to intercept, decrypt, and translate hostile radio traffic in real time. It didn't just pick up what enemies said. It told you what they meant. And right now, it told her that something was moving on the ground. Fast. Through the headset buried in her collar, she heard a clean voice, digitized and cold. 6 targets. Grid Alpha Charlie 93. Confirmed acceleration. Heat signature. Consistent with armored transport. 8I to contact zone. 34 minutes. Sam's pulse stayed steady. She'd been trained for this moment. Every detail of this mission had been fed into her weeks ago, drip by encrypted drip. She'd memorized the entire terrain grid, every possible route, and the full schedule of local radar sweeps. The convoy was not only real, it was early. She tapped the coordinates into her tablet. The math didn't add up. They weren't supposed to reach the target zone until at least T plus 90 minutes. That meant one thing. They were rushing, which meant either the Russians knew they were being watched, or worse, they baited NATO into flying directly above the convoy's path. It wasn't uncommon in proxy warfare. Leak false information, wait for the West to take the bait, then shoot them out of the sky and claim it was self-defense. Sam stiffened. She had only minutes to verify the payload and send coordinates to command. But if the plane's main comms went dark, and the enemy had the tech to do it, the entire operation would vanish with a single missile. She took a deep breath and slipped her hand into the inside lining of her utility vest. Her fingers found the hidden zipper. It revealed a thin, carbon weave wallet. Inside, 1 flash drive, 1 micro key, and a laminated card with only 5 words printed in red. Authority transfer. Level black -6. Most pilots didn't even know such a level existed. Sam had argued against carrying it. Too risky, too traceable if she were captured. But Langley insisted. If things went south, she wasn't just an observer. She was the contingency plan. The memory stick contained the only working uplink to a Black Ops satellite known as Palladium, capable of directly targeting airborne or ground-based threats in Eastern Europe without command chain clearance. Only 3 people in the world had access to it. She was one. She slid the drive into a secure port behind the communications rack and ran a silent test. The satellite responded immediately, confirming it was in position, scanning the zone, waiting for trigger data. But she still needed confirmation. Taking a deep breath, she adjusted her tablet's frequency range and boosted Spectre 9's listening radius by 10 kilometers. Static filled the channel, then voices. Not English, Russian. Coded, but not encrypted heavily. Someone was moving a cargo drop, under. Aerial cover. Then the word came. Typhus. Her stomach clenched. In old Soviet bioweapons files, typhus wasn't just a disease. It was a code name for a second-generation strain of weaponized pathogen, engineered decades ago to survive aerosol delivery and evade conventional filtration systems. It was never deployed. Too dangerous, too unstable. Rumor had it the last. Samples were destroyed during a lab explosion in '92. Apparently not. Now they were moving it, possibly through civilian zones. She leaned back, blinking fast to push down the adrenaline spike. This wasn't just another proxy play. This was a red line. She looked toward the cockpit. The crew was still oblivious, joking about fuel rations, completely unaware that they were minutes away from becoming the final line between Europe and a potential bioterror attack. Suddenly, the cabin lights dimmed. A flicker, then a flash of red across the mainboard. Comms. Signal LOSS primary UHF disabled. The pilot's voice came over the intercom. We're experiencing some interference. Trying to re-establish contact with Ramstein. Sam's head snapped toward the signal feed. The comm tower wasn't the problem. The jam was localized, directional. Someone was targeting them. They'd waited until the plane was deep enough into contested airspace to ensure no backup. Whoever was on the ground didn't want anyone hearing what was about to happen. She stood up slowly, clutching her tablet like a lifeline. She walked up the aisle, ignoring the confused stares from the junior analysts. "Hey," one of the aircrew said. "You okay?" Sam turned to him with practiced calm. "Do you trust your pilots?" He blinked. Sure." "Good," she said, "because they're about to learn something they never covered in flight school." Without another word, she stepped into the cockpit and sealed the door behind her. As soon as Sam stepped into the cockpit, the atmosphere changed. The confined space felt 10 degrees tighter than the rest of the aircraft. The 2 pilots, Major Daniels and Lieutenant Cross, turned in surprise. Nelder had expected the quiet. Tech contractor, from the back of the plane to barge in mid-flight, especially not with the kind of intensity written all over her face. Daniels raised an eyebrow. "Miss ... Keller, is it? You're not cleared for cockpit entry. We're in controlled airspace." "We're not in controlled airspace anymore," Sam said evenly. "We're being jammed." "That's not a systems glitch. It's a hostile signal." Lieutenant Cross frowned and turned back to his screen. "We're showing some interference. Yeah, but nothing consistent. Probably a frequency spike from the Ukrainian border relay." "No," Sam interrupted. "It's directional, and it's targeting us." Daniels leaned forward. "And how the hell do you know that?" Sam didn't answer with words. She pulled the black micro key from her vest and inserted it into the emergency override slot between the flight displays. A red light blinked, then another. And suddenly, the entire cockpit's secondary control panel rebooted with a sharp chirp and new icons that only appeared in Black Zone Authority mode. Both pilots froze. Daniel's voice dropped. "That's CIA level protocol. What are you doing on my aircraft? I'm activating Delta 9 Vector Protocol. You've got two Su-35s tracking us at high speed, 20 clicks out, and closing fast. We need to change altitude and move west by at least 15 degrees to hit the blind corridor. Cross muttered a curse under his breath. How do you even know that? Because I've been listening to them for 20 minutes, Sam replied, flicking her tablet forward. Russian chatter. They're calling us the Crow. That's what they call a WACS birds when they're cleared to engage. They're not just watching us. They're arming up. Daniels stared at the screen. Command hasn't confirmed any threats. Command can't, Sam said. We're isolated. Radio blackouts expanding. By the time anyone hears our distress, ping will be a vapor trail. Daniels hesitated. Years of training told him not to relinquish control of the flight under any circumstance, especially not to a civilian. But something in her tone, the way she carried herself, calm but intense, like a coiled fuse, made him pause. How far out are they? He asked. Sam didn't look at the radar. She already knew. 11 clicks, closing fast. We've got less than 2 minutes before they paint us. Just then, the proximity alarm blared sharp, loud, urgent, unidentified. Aircraft within 10 kilometers, Cross said, staring at his screen. No transponders. High speed. Coming in from the northeast. Daniels swore. We don't have authorization to alter course. Sam leaned in close. If we stay on this vector, we die. There was silence. The hum of the engines, the blinking of the panel lights, the drone of rising panic. Then Daniels flicked the switch, altering course. Descending to flight level 350. New heading, 278. The AWACS banked gently to the west, losing altitude just enough to slip beneath the surveillance net. To the casual observer, it looked like a weather evasion maneuver. But in truth, they were. Threading a needle ducking into one of the few unmonitored radar corridors left in that part of the sky. Sam exhaled slowly, then opened a side panel near the co-pilot's station. Behind it was a secondary ECM, electronic countermeasure, unit not standard issue. It had been installed days earlier by someone on Langley's payroll in secret. She activated it with her thumbprint. Deploying shadow signature, she said. 3 false radar targets, mimicking our altitude and heading. Cross stared at her. You had that installed without our knowledge? You were never supposed to need it, Sam said. But the game just changed. Outside, the cloud layer thickened. The Su-35s, now 9 kilometers away and accelerating, would be receiving ghost signatures on their systems. 3 identical aircraft, scattered across a triangular spread, all appearing equally real. Daniels watched the radar with narrowed eyes. They're splitting, Cross nodded. Looks like they're going after the shadows. Sam allowed herself a tiny breath of relief. It'll buy us time. Maybe 3 to 5 minutes. No more. What the hell is going on? Daniels asked, finally. Why would the Russians target us now? We're not armed. Because we're watching something they don't want us to see, Sam said. She tapped her tablet and brought up the satellite. Feed again. The convoy. Still moving, but now flanked by 2 armored scout vehicles. Those trucks? She said. They're not carrying weapons. They're carrying something worse. I intercepted the code word, typhus biothermal payload. If that crosses the civilian perimeter, thousands could die within hours. Maybe more. Daniels went pale. You're telling me this is a bioweapon op? I'm telling you this is bigger than any of us, Sam replied. Another proximity alert screamed through the cabin. One of the Su-35s had looped back. It was coming straight toward them high speed, tail first, clearly looking to confirm identity before engaging. Sam activated another system on the ECM unit, a pulse jammer designed to fuzz lock-on signals. The radar ping faltered. The fighter wobbled in the air, confused, but the window was closing. "Get us to grid Delta 4, Sam said, her voice sharp now. "We need line of sight to the Palladium satellite. I can only fire once." Daniels didn't ask what she meant by fire. He just pushed the throttle and dove west. The race had begun. The E-3 Sentry groaned as it dropped altitude, the frame vibrating with the sudden pressure shift. Below them, the Ukrainian plains stretched into a winter-burned blur of gray and rust, endless and exposed. Every second now mattered. Sam stayed hunched over the comms panel as the aircraft cut west. The pulse jammer had bought them a few minutes, but the Su-35 pilot was already adapting. These weren't green rookies. Whoever was flying behind them knew how to sniff out decoys, and wouldn't stop until they found the real crow dot in the cockpit. Daniels wrestled the yoke, like he was trying to keep a sleeping giant from waking. 30 seconds to Delta 4, but we're exposed. No cloud cover, no radar shield. "We don't need long," Sam replied, fingers dancing across her tablet. She ran the trajectory of the Russian convoy again. It had altered course, just slightly. Enough to dodge satellite flyovers, but not enough to hide its destination. A civilian city. Mariyivka. It wasn't a military zone. It wasn't even near the front. Just 10,000 people, farmland, and an open market square. If the bioweapon reached it, aerosolized or leaked, it would spread faster than anyone could stop it. That meant one thing. It was a test run. A demonstration. She gritted her teeth. Whoever greenlit this wasn't bluffing. The satellite pinged again, this time clean. Palladium online, lock ready. She quickly fed it the convoy's coordinates and terrain data. But she hesitated at the final step. Daniels glanced at her. "Something wrong?" "Palladium's accurate," she said slowly, "but not surgical. If I trigger a strike now, we take out the convoy, and anything within a 5-mile radius. You'll torch civilians? Not if we can confirm containment. I need visual ID on the cargo." Daniels leaned over the console. "That's suicide. You'd need a low pass, under their radar dome." Sam nodded. "I know." A quiet moment passed, broken only by the mechanical hum of the engines. Then Daniels looked her in the eye. "We can't lose you. If this goes to hell, you're the only one who can explain what happened. I'm also the only one who can stop what's about to happen," she said, rising to her feet. She moved fast, back through the corridor, and into the rear technical bay, where the E-3's surveillance operators still sat, confused and overwhelmed. One of them, the young tech named Pierce, stood when she entered. "Ma'am, are we under attack?" "Yes," Sam said, "and we're the only ones who can stop it." She opened the rear equipment cabinet and began pulling out components. Harness, mask, reinforced tether rig. A recon chute tighter than standard issue and rated for high-altitude deployment. It wasn't part of the plane's official loadout. She'd smuggled it aboard. Pierce blinked. "You're jumping?" Sam strapped herself into the harness. "I'm dropping low enough to get eyes on that convoy. I'll paint the target and confirm payload. Once I do, the strike goes green." "Strike?" Pierce whispered. "You're calling in a strike?" "Only if I have to." The rear hatch. Warning light turned red. Daniel's voice buzzed through the cabin speaker. "We're passing over the corridor. You've got 90 seconds. Sam nodded once, pulled down her mask, and clipped herself to the tether rig. The others watched in silence as the bay door began to open. Wind screamed into the cabin, like a beast waking from slumber. Air pressure punched against her chest. Lights flashed red. She stepped to the edge, one boot on steel, the other hanging in thin air. Then she jumped. For one eternal second, Sam wasn't falling, she was flying. The roar of the aircraft faded behind her. The clouds split as she sliced through. The sky falling into the breathless quiet of the upper atmosphere. Her mind emptied. Training took over. She rotated her body for stability, reached for her chute trigger, and waited until the altimeter blinked green dot at 5,000 feet. She pulled. The chute opened with a jolt. The landscape below rushed up to meet her. Dirt roads, thin trees, concrete, ruins, and then 6 gray trucks crawling across the open land, exactly where her intel predicted. But something was wrong. The vehicles weren't hiding. They were dispersing. Sam adjusted her descent, deploying her glider wing to veer closer. Without being seen, she activated the wrist-mounted camera and zoomed in. 3 trucks, 2 armored. The third, rearmost, had ventilation pipes running from the inside to the roof. Inside the transport cage, through a cracked door, she saw men in hazmat suits moving. A container the size of a coffin. It was no bluff. She tapped her wrist. Target confirmed. The satellite link blinked blue. Strike. Request locked. Confirm engagement? Her finger hovered over the trigger, and then a shimmer in the tree line. Sam adjusted the zoom. A child, just outside the convoy's perimeter, watching. Not 20 yards from the armored trucks. He wasn't part of the operation. Just unlucky. A farmer's son, maybe? A stray. Her hand froze. If she called the strike now, he'd die. If she didn't, another shimmer, another child. A second figure appeared. Then a woman. Civilians. She snapped the camera wide. The convoy had rerouted through a hidden village checkpoint. Abandoned on maps, but very much alive now. There were dozens of people scattered around. Someone had done this, on purpose. They weren't hiding the BIOWEAPO and . They were using civilians as human shields. Her earpiece crackled. Daniels. Sam? We're about to lose uplink. You need to fire now or abort. Her pulse thundered. Palladium's clock was counting down. T-minus 30 seconds to auto-abort. She took one last look at the ground, then did something she hadn't done in years. She closed her eyes. And whispered, "Override. Halo red." The satellite link accepted the command. Target reassigned. Coordinates updated. Sam had made a choice. She wouldn't strike the convoy. She'd target the bridge ahead of it, collapse the road, and cut them off, buying time for extraction teams without blood on her hands. She hit send. High above her, invisible in the stratosphere, something stirred. A weapon system powered up. The sky held its breath. At 42,000 feet above Earth, where the atmosphere thins into silence and satellites drift like sentinels, Palladium received its final command. It responded instantly. There was no countdown, no dramatic warning siren, no red button. Just mathematics. Brutal and surgical. High-energy kinetic rods, nicknamed rods from God, began their release sequence from the Black Ops satellite's weapon chamber. Each rod was the size of a telephone pole, made of tungsten, designed to strike with the force of a small tactical nuke, but without radiation. Target: the bridge north of Marinivka. Purpose: sever the convoy route. Collateral: minimal. From her descent path, Sam watched the sky above the tree line blur for a split second. Then boom. No explosion, no fireball. Just a shockwave. The air rippled. A piercing, unnatural thunder cracked across the horizon. From her chute, she saw the shockwave hit the treetops. The forest trembled like it had taken a punch. In the distance, birds scattered in chaotic bursts. A second later, the bridge in the path of the convoy crumbled in a flash of dust and pulverized concrete. She didn't need confirmation. The Palladium strike had landed precisely. The convoy screeched to a halt. From her position above, Sam could see drivers and guards leaping out, panicked, looking for drones or aircraft. But they'd never see the satellite. And by the time they figured out what happened, the damage was done. The road was gone. There. Route was cut. And for the first time in 20 minutes, Sam exhaled. But she wasn't on the ground yet. She adjusted her wingsuit, pulling the toggle hard to angle away from the convoy, catching a southerly gust. Her glider suit pulled her like a hawk riding thermal wind, away from the danger, down toward a tree-covered ridge marked for pickup by NATO's quick extraction force. Behind her, the Russian operatives scrambled to make sense of the strike. She could hear the panic over the Spectre 9 audio, feed still wired into her shoulder. Strike from above. Unknown origin. Satellite? Is that even possible? Get the canisters out, now. Sam landed hard between two thick trees, tumbling into the underbrush. Her chute caught a branch and dragged, but she cut herself free quickly. Her boots hit soil. She crouched, heart-hammering. And then silence, but it didn't last. A sharp snap echoed. Nearby. Voices. She wasn't alone. Sam dropped to her stomach, rolling behind a fallen log, and activated her wrist scanner. Thermal signatures. 4 heat sources, moving toward her position. They'd seen the chute. Maybe even spotted her mid-air. They were coming fast. She tapped her cones. Ghost 1 to Watchtower. Extraction window narrowing. Hostiles on approach. Need evac vector. No response. She adjusted the signal band. Still nothing. The satellite strike had fried more than the bridge. The feedback loop had disrupted the regional comnet. She was dark. Alone. Behind enemy lines. Her hand slid toward the grip of her concealed sidearm. A modified Glock with a suppressor. Quiet. Reliable. She counted the steps. 30 meters. 20, 15. A voice in Russian barked something sharp. She has to be here. The chute is fresh. Sam didn't wait for them to finish searching. She moved like a whisper, crawling through the brush, hugging the ridge. Each motion was controlled, methodical, the kind of movement that came from hours of training and the very real knowledge that a wrong breath could mean death. Then she saw it, an opening. A shallow rock overhang just below a slope. It wasn't much, but it was enough to buy her time. She slid into it and stilled her breathing. 2 soldiers passed within 20 feet, weapons drawn. Their eyes swept the brush, but they moved too fast. Overconfident, they assumed she'd run. Not hide. Amateurs. She waited until they moved deeper into the woods, then triggered her emergency beacon. A small chip embedded in the inner lining of her glove. It wasn't powerful, but it sent out a short-range burst, a breadcrumb. If the QEF birds were circling anywhere near the border, they'd pick it up. All she had to do was survive until they arrived. Easier said than done. A sudden ping on her Spectre tablet caught her eye. Somehow, the uplink held just long enough to grab one last satellite image. The convoy had split. The trucks hadn't stopped. The bridge was down. Yes, but 2 of the smaller transports had gone off-road, moving through a forest path that ran parallel to the river. Terrain was rough, slow, but passable, and they were still headed toward the town. Her heart dropped. The strike had slowed them, but it hadn't stopped them. Damn it, she hissed. Under her breath, this wasn't over. They were determined to reach that town, one way or another. Orders, money, blackmail, didn't matter. Whatever they were carrying was too valuable to abandon. And now, there were fewer witnesses. If Sam didn't stop them before they reached the civilian perimeter, everything she'd done, the jump, the override, the strike, would mean nothing. But she was outnumbered, alone, and unarmed, save for a pistol and a half-dead Cums rig. She stared at the fading heat signatures of the trucks on her screen. Jaw tightening. She'd bought time. Now she had to buy hope. Somewhere behind her, a branch cracked. Sam raised her pistol, every nerve wired for survival. She was ready. Let them come. The soldier stepped into her line of sight, rifle raised, scanning through the fog and trees. Sam didn't hesitate. Pop. The suppressed clock spat a whisper of death. The soldier dropped before he knew he'd been hit. A single round to the neck. No noise. No alert. Sam rushed forward, grabbing his rifle before it hit the ground, then dragged his body behind the brush. She checked the weapon. A K-104. Customized grip, thermal sight, and 3 full mags. She slung it over her shoulder and quickly unzipped his pouch. Field map, encrypted comms radio, and a thin black tablet with an unfamiliar interface. She tapped the screen. Convoy tracker. Real-time updates. Whoever this guy was, he had access to the lead unit's telemetry. Her eyes narrowed. 2 vehicles, both smaller than the original trucks. One was labeled primary, the other decoy. The convoy was smarter than she thought. They'd planned for disruptions. If anyone hit the main route, like she had, a secondary unit would slip through the gaps. Smaller load, same payload. Bioweapons. In duplicate. Sam wiped her brow. Clever bastards. The tracker blinked. A new heading. The primary vehicle was moving southwest, along a ridge that led directly into Marinivka's central irrigation canal, the city's water system. If the container leaked or ruptured there, it would flow straight into the town within hours. Not a mass bombing. A slow kill. Silent. Untraceable. She moved. Feet pounding against soft earth. She looped behind the second Russian search party and sprinted toward the ridgeline. Every instinct screamed at her to duck, to wait for evac, but she couldn't. There was no time, no cavalry. Just her, 1 rifle, and a death convoy she needed to stop alone. As she crested the ridge, she saw it, the 2 trucks crawling. Along the valley floor, 100 yards apart. She dropped prone, clicked the thermal sight on the AK, and scanned the first truck. 2 drivers. No armor. Then the second. 3 armed men. 1 biocontainer strapped to a reinforced crate. She switched to burst mode, took a breath, and fired. The first burst shredded the tires of the lead truck. The vehicle bucked sideways, metal screaming, and slammed into a tree. Shouts erupted from inside. She rolled right and unleashed another volley at the second. It swerved, but kept moving, until she put 2 rounds through the windshield. The driver slumped. Chaos. Men scrambled out, confused, blind, unsure of where the shots had come from. She counted 3, no, 4. Then a 5th, bulkier, older. He shouted orders and dragged the container from the back of the truck. He wasn't running. He was arming it. Sam cursed and rolled into a new position as gunfire cracked through the forest. Trees split. Bark exploded. She stayed low, moving fast, switching mags mid-crawl. 4 against 1. They didn't know her position, but they were closing fast, moving in a flanking arc. She popped up behind a rock and fired, hit one in the shoulder. He spun and fell, screaming. 2 others redirected toward her new location. She pivoted again, sprinting low. Her side burned, lungs screaming. She had seconds, maybe less, before they cornered her. Then she saw it. A shallow ditch, covered in ice. Led down toward the first truck. She dove in and slid, bullets zipping past her ears. When she stopped, she was behind the lead truck, still smoking from the crash. And just ahead, the big man was working on the bio-container. Wires. A countdown. Module. 10-digit interface. Too fast to be anything but a timed dispersal unit. She raised the rifle, but he turned and grabbed the hostage. The child. The same boy she'd seen earlier. He must have followed the convoy. Curious. Now he was being used as a human shield. Drop the weapon. The Russian shouted in English, his voice guttural. You fire. The boy dies. You lose. Sam held her ground. If you release that gas, everyone dies, including you. I have a mask. You do not. Sam's grip tightened. Her brain raced. She couldn't take the shot. Not with the boy in the way. But she noticed something. The bio-container was still half-strapped into the crate. If it fell, it would rupture. She needed to stop the man before he activated the dispersal, without hitting the canister. She shifted her aim slightly. Last warning, the man said. She didn't answer. She moved, a sharp roll to the right. He turned to follow, and she fired. Shot, straight through his kneecap. He screamed and dropped the child, falling backward. Second shot, into the dispersal module. Sparks flew. The wiring blew. Sam lunged forward, grabbing the child, dragging him away from the canister. The man howled in pain, reaching for a pistol, but Sam stomped his wrist hard enough to snap bone. You have no idea, she said coldly. How lucky. You are. I didn't call in another strike. He spat blood, laughing. Velko. You stopped one convoy. That's nothing. We have more. Sam didn't flinch. Now you're going to tell me where. He looked up, defiant, until she drew a second beacon from her boot, the one that summoned interrogation units, and he understood. Then what she really was, not crew, not a contractor, but the firewall between war and genocide. By the time the quick extraction force arrived, the sun was low, casting the Marinivka Valley in slanted gold. Dust swirled behind the Black Hawks as they settled, their rotors chopping the silence into pieces. Sam stood near the wrecked convoy, face streaked with sweat and ash, her rifle slung and her fingers twitching from the adrenaline crash. The child clung to her leg. Behind her, two medics secured the deactivated bioweapon into a reinforced vault. Another unit zip-tied the Russian commander's broken hands before dragging him toward the chopper. His eyes still burned with fury, but there was something else in them now. Fear. Not of Sam, but of what she represented. The Americans weren't just watching anymore. They were intervening. Ma'am, said the squad leader as he approached, his helmet still steaming from the flight. Situations contained? Sam nodded. One container. 2 dead drivers. 1 wounded. And that guy, she pointed to the Russian commander, was seconds from gassing a Ukrainian waterway. There are more. He said it himself. This was a proof of concept. The squad leader's jaw tightened. A test run, she nodded grimly. And we nearly failed. He looked past her at the child, who now sat wrapped in a thermal blanket. Where'd the boy come from? Sam didn't answer at first. Her eyes were scanning the tree line, the ruined trucks, the still smoking wreckage of the lead vehicle. So many what-ifs floated in the silence. He followed them, she finally said. Curiosity, or instinct, maybe dumb luck. Either way, he's the reason I didn't push the first strike all the way through. I thought he was just an accident in their path. But they planned it? Sam's voice dropped. They made sure to use civilians as shields. On purpose. I checked the maps. That town wasn't on any standard route. Someone chose that detour. You think Moscow ordered it? She looked at him, steady. No, I think someone else did. That thought stayed with her as they lifted off, the sky now darker than before. Below, the planes disappeared into cloud shadow, but Sam didn't look down. She was already reviewing the recovered Russian tracker tablet, encrypted, biometric locked. But its operating system wasn't Russian military standard. Too refined, too agile. Sam had seen similar tech before, buried in the Black Ops world, where state lines blurred and contractors danced between flags. She connected the tablet to her field. Decrypt her and let it hum while she caught her breath. Daniel's voice came over the earpiece. "Welcome back, Sky Queen. You almost gave me a heart attack." "I had it under control," she murmured. "You jumped into live airspace with one gun and no backup." "Pretty sure that's the opposite of control." She gave a half smile. "Yeah, but I landed the shot." There was a pause. Then he added, "Listen, we've been pulling satellite logs, and we found something weird. The convoy's route? It wasn't filed in any Russian tactical system. No military logbooks. No field commanders briefed. That truck didn't belong to the army." Sam sat up straighter. "Then who did it belong to?" "That's the thing. It wasn't even Russian. The thing matched a vehicle registered to a shell company in Dubai. Same one involved in the Nairobi gas leak 2 years ago." Sam's blood turned cold. "Helix Partners," she said. Daniels cursed under his breath. "You already knew." "I suspected," she replied. "They've been quietly buying old Soviet hardware and repurposing it for research. The kind of research that leaves towns glowing or choking." "And the guy you captured?" Daniels asked. "Was probably on their payroll," Sam said. "Hired muscle with old Spetsnaz credentials. Enough to blend in, not enough to question the mission." Her decryptor beeped. "Access granted." The tablet flashed to life, and a full map bloomed across the screen. Red lines, arrows, icons. Convoy routes. All across Europe. Sam's heart hammered. This wasn't a one-off dot. It was a network. Each dot represented a potential drop. Each route ended near population centers, reservoirs, or transit hubs. One ended in Warsaw, another in Munich, a third dangerously close to Istanbul's western edge. She looked up, her face pale in the dim cabin. "They're building a silent offensive," she whispered. "Bioweapon drops, buried under cover-ups and deniability. Every convoy is a ghost." "No flag, no trace," Daniel said. "We need to go public." "No," Sam snapped. "We go quiet. This isn't something the press can spin. This is the kind of war that doesn't get declared, just executed." She disconnected the tablet and slipped it into a sealed case. Then, after a moment, she opened her wristband and pressed a long dormant button. A satellite beacon blinked on. Daniels choked. "That's your emergency call to Black." "You sure?" Sam's jaw tightened. "Yeah, we're past emergency now. Who are you bringing in?" "The only people left who fight wars without needing medals." A pause. Then Daniels said quietly, "The Phantom Directive." She nodded. "Deep in the Shadow War. It was the last resort group. Unofficial. Unlisted. Operatives so far off-grid they didn't exist. Not on payrolls. Not in briefings. Not in the history books. Most were presumed dead. But they'd answer. Her call. And if she was right about what Helix was planning next, she would need every single one of them. The chopper banked toward the western border. Sam didn't look out the window. She was already planning the next strike. They met in silence. No names. No ranks. Just nods, faded tattoos, scars, and eyes that had seen too much. The Phantom Directive assembled in a decommissioned NATO bunker beneath the Carpathian Mountains, where thick stone and twisted cables kept the outside world out. Men and women who had vanished from the records years ago stood shoulder to shoulder. Former Delta operators, rogue MI6 assets, one ex-Mossad ghost with a prosthetic hand made of carbon and instinct, and in the center, standing at the head of the war table, was Sam. No longer the rogue pilot who had taken over a military jet midair. No longer just a contractor. Now, she was the firewall. Cody name confirmed. She laid out the satellite tablet and let the map flicker to life. Dots. Arrows. Convoy paths stretching across Europe, the Middle East, and parts of North Africa. Behind her, Daniels clicked through. Encrypted briefings, surveillance footage, biosignature manifests, facial recognition hits. Each convoy was real. Each one was scheduled within the next 90 days. Some were already moving. These aren't theories anymore, Sam began, her voice cold, clear, stripped of anything but purpose. Helix Partners has seeded 12 operational teams using shell convoys to transport Class A engineered bioweapons. They're not targeting armies. They're targeting infrastructure, dams, water plants, urban power grids. A woman with a French accent spoke. Why not just attack directly? Why so quiet? Because they don't want war, Sam said. They want collapse, riots, political breakdown, and after that contracts. Cleanup deals. Supply monopolies. Control. They create the wound, said Daniels grimly, and sell you the bandage. An older man at the end of the table, gray-bearded and silent until now, finally stood. He wore no insignia, no medals. But when he spoke, everyone listened. Thought this kind of war ended when the Cold War died, he said. Turns out it just went private sector. Sam handed out files, targets marked for neutralization. Convoy IDs, contact protocols, extraction plans. There are 4 teams already in motion. Each of you gets one. Find them. Stop them. Quietly. No headlines. No loose ends. Then she turned to the wall, where the Palladium satellite feed displayed live intel. If anything fails, I'll launch another orbital strike. A quiet murmur passed through the room. You have Palladium access? Someone asked. Sam gave a grim smile. After what happened over Marinivka, Command decided I earned it. Someone else whistled low. Damn, thought only the Secretary of Defense had that key. He does, Daniels said. But she flies the trigger. Silence. Then a few respectful nods. No one questioned it. Because if what she'd done over enemy lines proved anything, it was this. She doesn't bluff. 12 days later, Istanbul, Turkey, the Helix convoy rolled through the outskirts of the city, disguised as a UN medical transport. Drivers wore fake badges. The bioweapon, codenamed Verdance, was packed into a pressure-sealed cryopod designed to survive heat, frost, and even gunfire. They never saw the hit coming. A single drone, black, silent, dropped a sonic grenade from 30 meters up. Windows shattered. Ears bled. In the chaos, a team of 3 broke formation, blew out the rear axle, and secured the pod before anyone inside could fire back. All in under 3 minutes. The footage never made the news. The van was listed as having broken down from overheating. The real story? Vanished. Madrid, Spain, another convoy. Different tactic. This one drove directly into a tunnel and never came out. Cameras were looped. Traffic rerouted. By the time the police investigated 2 hours later, the vehicles were gone, replaced with burned decoys buried under rubble from a natural landslide. One driver was found tied to a tree 3 miles north, stripped of his fake credentials. He refused to speak until someone whispered, "Firewall sent us." Then he folded. Washington, D.C., 2 weeks later, the president sat in the Situation Room with the Secretary of Defense and General Kyle Trenton. On the screen, Sam, patched in via encrypted uplink from a bunker in Norway. You shut down 7 convoys, the president said. The press doesn't even know. Half the Joint Chiefs don't know. Sam nodded. That was the idea. And now Helix? Off the grid, she said. Their stocks are crashing. Their labs are being dismantled. Some of their field commanders turned on them. Others vanished. Is it over? The secretary asked. Sam shook her head. No, it's never over. But we bought time. And the world will never know how close they came to falling apart over a sip of water. The president leaned back. And what do you want, Sam? A promotion? Your name cleared? She looked directly at the screen. I want you to erase my record. Again. The room fell silent. I'm not a commander, not a contractor. I'm not a ghost. I'm the last wall between this world and the next silent war. And if I'm going to keep fighting it, I need to disappear. The president nodded slowly. You'll have whatever you need. Then get me a new jet, she said. And a bigger satellite. Later that night, unknown location Sam stood on the tarmac of a private airfield, wind whipping her coat as the prototype Stratos 9 jet warmed up behind her. She carried no bag, no phone, got only a new mission file, marked top line black, and the bracelet around her wrist blinking with one green dot. Active firewall. The pilot saluted. Ready, Commander? Sam smiled faintly. Don't call me that. She climbed aboard 40,000 feet above the world. With nothing between the sky and the fire below, she flew again. And this time, everyone knew. They thought she was crew. Until she took over at 40,000 feet and changed the course of war forever.